Good morning. Happy Monday, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are joining us from. Welcome to another Operation Separation. I'm your host, Shel Shapiro. With me today is one of my favorite creatives in all the world, Wendy Gilhula, joining me from her pottery studio in Tennessee. Welcome, Wendy. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Shell, I'll give you $5 after for that.
Shameless plug, right?
I'm so excited to be here. This is my little home away from home, and I'm happy to share it with you and your followers.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. You are somebody that has inspired me to tap back into my creativity, especially when we first connected. I think it was just pre-pandemic, but we had continued speaking throughout that time, and we would have our weekly calls and check in with each other to see what we were working on, and so I know for a lot of people, if we think back to the beginning of the pandemic, a lot of people were going stir crazy, losing their minds and not wanting to be at home and doing nothing, and yet we were over here in our spaces writing new children's books, starting podcasts, and doing all the things. You started your pottery as an outlet just to get out and be able to tap into your creativity again. And I think that's so remarkable that not just you or I, but anybody can tap into their creativity in this way and all the things that it can turn into and lead into. So I want to just talk a little bit more about being a creative and knowing that you are one. And for me, this is something that I kind of feel like I was born with it. I've always felt creative. It's in my family, it's in my genes, whether it's a genetic thing that's passed down, but I was surrounded by it all the time. I had a grandmother that was always cooking, baking, crocheting, knitting, doing all the crafts and beading. I had an uncle who was a chef. I had another uncle that was a painter and always liked to play around with photography. I had a grandfather that was always singing and dancing, and I just wanted to be around it all the time and absorb it. And so I've always felt this need to create in various capacities. What was your experience with creativity? Is that something that you've felt like you always had, or how did you explore that?
Yeah, I feel like I've always had it. I grew up an only child, and nobody in my close family is an artist or is not really a creative. My mom doesn't even she doesn't like to cook. There wasn't much, but I remember getting a record player for my 6th birthday, and I would play Jackson 5 ABC, that ABC song, over and over. And I didn't have any dance lessons. I didn't know what choreography was, didn't know the word, but I made up a dance to the whole 45. And I still know it today. It's very easy, but I still remember, and it was this need that I had to do it, and I had to finish it. I couldn't just do a little bit of it. I had to learn the entire record.
Yeah.
So that was my very first time I remember being creative.
That's interesting that you said that you couldn't just do a little snippet of it. You had to do the whole thing. And I love that you said you remember all of it still to this day. You also mentioned that nobody else in your family seemed to have this. So what made you want to keep going with it? Did it feel good? What did it feel like for you to tap into this energy, this creativity?
As a child, it just felt very natural, and it was relaxing, and it was in some way it was rewarding. My mom actually, since I choreographed that, my mom did enroll me in tap classes and ballet classes, and the kids would judge each other, and you would get these different color stars. Oh, it was awful. You have to stand up and do first position, second position, third, fourth, and fifth in front of all your peers who are 6, right? And they've been taking since they've been 4, okay? And they know you're new.
Everyone's got to start somewhere, right?
I know. So I still have my pink little thing with the stars on it. I would get red or blue, which is not good or very not good. And my very last day of class, because I was going to be moving to Tennessee, my teacher gave me a silver star. And I had been, I had been dejected, like, oh gosh, I'm not even good at ballet. I'm really not good today because I got the red star. But when she gave me the silver star, it's really funny because I carried that feeling over. So when I moved, I felt I had more self esteem. I'm like, okay, I've had one silver star under my belt. I can try this again.
Yeah.
And I did. And then I danced for decades. So.
I love that. That like that little like urge to keep pushing yourself that you like transformed into like allowing you to keep going and flourish in that space and continue to tap into it. Again, you going back to I'm torn between like staying with this dance
Oh,
like that we're talking about, but also like I want to talk from the other side too. And going back to the rest of your family not having this creative gene, so to speak. You're also a math teacher. You're also an educator. So like, oh, is that this? Did your family have that gene, or because math is not normally like considered to be like a creative field, like, and none of the STEM fields are, but like I like to think of them as all being creative because they all help you problem solve, and so that's using your creativity too. So did you find that when you were like tapping into your educator and math backgrounds, that you were also creative, or how did that come into play?
Well, growing up, I didn't ever think I was very good at math. I did make good grades, but when the teacher said like the word variable, I was like, what? And yeah, I would like my brain would go, what's a variable? What's a variable? What's a variable? And then she'd explain the whole thing on the board. And by the time she was done, I was like, I didn't hear what she said because I was stuck on
Because you were
variables.
so busy thinking about what it was.
Right. So my mind would, I guess, now being an adult looking back, would reverse engineer the problem. So I could look at the problem, and a lot of people can do this. Look at the problem and go, oh, x equals 8. Well, how do I know x equals 8? So I'd write x equals 8 on the bottom, and then I would go all the way back up to the top of the problem. I never felt very confident doing that. So what happened was when I had children, my son happens to be very, very gifted in math. So he was doing some peer tutoring after school. So my daughter and I, Evan, we would just hang out and wait for him to do his peer tutoring. And then he attracted so many kids that they needed help. So I volunteered to help. So I was able somehow to explain it where kids understood it better. And then they'd kind of be okay with doing math because it didn't hurt so bad. And I understood the pain because
Yeah,
a lot of
because you've been
people
there.
would go into math class and your stomach is, killing you. And because you're like, I have no idea what we did yesterday. And, it just keeps stacking up. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And then a parent called me and said, hey, you're doing really well with my son. Do you mind tutoring my son privately? And I was like, oh, you don't want that. I'm a dancer. And she said, no, I have to have you. And then it's been word of mouth for 19 years. I do anywhere, I average fifth grade or sixth grade up to senior in high school. Not calculus, but I go up to pre-calculus.
Okay.
And
I love this side of the creativity because it's the problem solving, the reverse engineering
yes,
that allows you to help people feel more confident. And because you learned it for yourself and it's what worked for you, and because you felt that anxiety and like the nervous knots that you got like when you didn't feel good enough at
yeah,
math or whatever the subject was, and showing people that same process could help them to relieve some of those knots and stress that they were feeling about those same math equations. Yeah, so that's such a great way to look at math and processes to like solve problems.
mhm,
Because I always think that there's a million ways to do everything. And so it doesn't matter where you're looking at it from, you can always find a way to solve the problem. So for you, that was like starting backwards and working to the beginning. And
Yeah, but
sometimes that's what you need to do.
and math has changed since I was in school.
Oh yeah.
So I had to learn the new ways of doing it and then explain them to the students. And math is not a passion of mine. I am grateful that I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm grateful that, like I have the skills, but it's not my passion. So that's what has me connect with my students so quickly, is that they don't love math either. And I said, I will never say, we're going to have fun today, because word problems feel like you would rather put the pencil in your eye than do a word problem. I get it. I get it. And they first were like, no, she doesn't think. I'm like, mm-mm. Over time, they're like, yeah, she really doesn't like this. And so it's funny because I said, I'm never going to say we're having fun, like in the math problem. I said, but I bet you will in 3 months. Within 3 months, they go, oh my gosh, this is fun. And I go, you're fired. You're out of here.
You had one job, was to not have fun while doing math.
And then they laugh. And just knowing, it's very rewarding knowing that they can go in math class and not have that knot in their stomach, because they've already heard it before they went into class or whatever, or they know they're going to have some help with their
Yeah.
homework.
And you're not the person that's going to be like, all right, we need to do this because you're going to use this every day in your professional life. You're going to learn how to do these algebraic equations. You're going to have to know all of this stuff. And
Hey,
no, like, how much math do you use on a day? Okay, we use basic math, but like, are we really solving quadratic equations on a daily basis? Like, no, we're
silly.
not. At least not calling it that.
Hey, for parents out there who have their children ask them, why do I have to learn this anyway? Because you hear it all the time. Why do I have to learn this? I don't get it. Why? Because we're not going to use it, and they know they're not going to use it in real life. I said, you are actually using it in real life. And they go, where? And I go, so you can graduate 10th grade and go to 11th grade. That's where it's relevant. You got to pass it and go on up. And then that's why that makes it relevant today. We have to do the homework.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to. And then they're like, yeah, that makes sense. I said, unless you want to stay in 10th grade, then.
And it's actually more applicable to say that it's not about the numbers so much when it comes to math. The way that you're using it in your everyday life is the way that you think about solving the problem, the way that you put that process into place, and like how you can like go from A to Z or anywhere in between and figure out what the next step is. And that's how
Yeah.
you use math in everyday life. And so I love just being able to think of it from that perspective, as opposed to, I'm never going to use this. Like, this is, unless I'm going to be an accountant, or
Yeah.
like doing all the functions and like sitting there, like punching the numbers. No, there are machines for this.
Right. Right.
I don't need to do this. I have a calculator.
So I have to get creative, there. I have to get creative there and to getting them motivated as to why they have to do this math. And then we're also creative because the higher you go in math, the more I call it linear flow, but the more ways you have to begin a problem and still do it the way your teacher wants you to do it and still learn the technique. So I try to help them be creative and say, okay, what do I know about this triangle? And they're like, I said, there's no wrong answer. It's just, you just start with, what do I know about a triangle? And then you'll apply those things, like it's 180 degrees. And then you look and see if that even applies. And if it doesn't, you go to the next thing you know about a triangle. And that creativity helps them gain a lot of confidence. So
yeah, start with what you know to be true. And yeah, some people can find this really, really like frustrating because they don't know what they don't know, right? And so if you're not even, sometimes you're questioning even what you know. Is this really like what I know, and is it
yeah.
factual, or do I just think it? Like, am I just feeling it and it's not real? And so we get in our heads a lot, and so that's where I want to ask about being left-brained versus right-brained. Like, how does that help in our everyday lives when we're tapping into our creativity and our creative process?
Well, a lot of people say they're not creative, or they don't have a creative bone in your body, like that, like what you wrote. Yes, was it yesterday or this
Yeah.
earlier? And that's not true. It's what the problem is that maybe you don't know how to tap into your creativity. How do you find it? Like, where is it? So when so I was studying this, and the left brain, if you can activate the left brain and the right brain at the same time, then that's where you hit the creativity in your mind. So this is what I talk about when I speak, when I do keynotes about creativity and helping people find their creativity at work or in their personal lives. And I do this little exercise where, so I'll put you on the spot. Do you know what right-brained um, functions, or what the right brain does inside of the brain?
Uh, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say that it. What I do know is that it controls like the opposite.
It
Uh,
does.
so like
See, what do you know? This is what you start with. What do you know?
let's go back to what I know. You're
Yeah.
putting me on the spot here, and I feel like I know these things, but like if I'm not tapping into them every day, then they're not actively like present. So let's tap into what I know. If I'm right brained, then I'm using the left of
Mhm.
things, which actually makes sense because I'm left-handed. Um, but actually, with a lot of things, I'm ambidextrous
Me
and I do
too.
both. So the only thing that I really do left-handed, it dominantly is right.
Me too.
I write and I
Right
paint
hand.
and I draw. Like anything that has to do with like making a mark is usually done with my left. Any sports though, I play right-handed. With the exception of tennis and soccer, I can hit and kick from both sides, but I can't throw a baseball with both hands. I can swing a bat with both hands, but like I can't throw a baseball with both hands. One would just like flop like dead in the water almost. But like there's a lot of things that I do on both sides, and then there are things that I can only do lefty. There are also things that I can only do righty. I can only, as I knock things over, I can only use a computer mouse. Can't even see it. I'm trying to hold it up and it's not working. I can only use a computer mouse on the right side. I tried using a Wacom tab with the pen and or like any with the stylus, even on like some touchscreen devices. I cannot hold a stylus or a pen in my right hand. And so I can't, the same goes the other way. I can't switch and use a mouse on the left hand. Why? Because I've been trained to do it righty. So now I can't
Mhm.
switch.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I know it's opposite, but sometimes for me it's both because I'm activating both in a
Both
lot of
sides.
ways.
Yeah. That's when you should draw. That's when you should paint and draw. So the left side is logic, order, numbers. The other side is for your creativity, finding patterns and colors and textures and things like that. So that's something that you probably grew up doing. If everybody would like, nobody's watching you at home or your office or wherever you are. Do you remember rub the stomach and pat the head?
I'm so bad at this. I'm
Well,
so bad at this.
I don't want to
You can't see it. I'm not going to lower my screen to do it because that would just take forever.
rub
Rubbing my stomach
and
and patting my head. And it's kind of working, but at the same time, I'm kind of rubbing and patting both at the same time. It's hard to stop.
it
And that's
is.
when my right hand and my left right hand is on my stomach and my left hand is on my head. But what if I try to switch
Yeah.
and now it's the same thing? I'm trying to like rub my head and pat my stomach. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, I practiced this, so it's a little bit easier for me. I'm kind of cheated, but if you do that, if you can just practice that just for 30 seconds, and as soon as you can control both of the hands in the way they're supposed to do it, that you have tapped into the part of your brain that is the most creative, where your creativity lies.
Wow. Okay.
So I don't. Nobody's watching. You do that. 30
We
seconds.
all need to tap into this exercise right now.
Yeah, and then get out a piece of paper or whatever medium you like, and just do something, and you'll feel the flow. And
Yeah.
it'll be, it's little baby steps. Not going to be like, oh, it could be like, boom, you're a prodigy, and you didn't know it. That's
Yeah.
fine. But yeah,
Yeah, for something that like I love that exercise. Something that I do a lot, and I notice that I do it without even thinking about it now, because I've been doing it for like the last year or so. Like when I feel blocked or when I just feel not really connected with myself, And I put my hand on my forehead as a way to reconnect with myself. And what this does for me is it just takes my focus and my attention away from whatever is distracting me. And so it forces me, one, to feel my hand on my head. And so now I'm thinking about that hand being pressed on my forehead. Two, I feel the coolness of my palm. So that's kind of like bringing me back too. Especially if I'm like overheated or sweaty or like nervous, because I do get that like nervous sweat sometimes. But like sometimes if I'm just not feeling like creative or in my or able to focus or just like whatever that feeling is, and I need to recenter myself, putting my hand on my forehead brings me back to that center. I'm literally putting it right in front of me. And so that helps as well, not necessarily just for creativity, but overall to just like what is it that like I am here to do. And usually that's a form of creation, whether that I'm like posting a caption or like putting up like a new video or coming on to a live stream with some amazing guests. Like usually right before I'm recentering myself because I'm like, I want to be present in this moment. And I want to activate all the things. And I can't do that if I'm over here, if I'm over here, if I'm back there. Like I want to be right here. I want to be right in this moment. And so yeah, I love your idea of like tapping into it, like tap, tap, rub, rub. You can't see it, but it's happening. And harnessing your creativity, but also being present in like what's true right now. Yeah, there's other ways that people do this and get back to their center. I know some people, like I do it too when I'm about to cry. It's like if I touch my nose, I'm now focusing on touching my nose, so I'm not thinking about crying. But that's not the point here. It's just another way to like refocus myself.
Yes.
So I love that. Let's tap into your creativity a little bit. I know you're under glazing today. Is that correct? Like,
Yes, I am. This is like stage 5. So it's funny on the left hand, right hand thing. I am right handed, but as I was learning, they kept telling me I was doing it backwards. So I thought, okay, I'll just try it left handed. Like, oh, no, you don't want to do that. I'm like, why? And they go, oh. And I was like, I throw left handed. So much, I mean, it's like all of a sudden it clicked when I tried it with my left hand. So this is a 3.5-pound pitcher. So it's just started with a mound of clay. And then I've shaped the pitcher and put on a handle. And I'm trying to teach myself a technique for myself. Or like, it's not, I've researched the technique. It's like imposto painting, but I can't find it. I can find it very thin layers on pottery, but I can't find it thick like this. So I'm teaching myself and learning and being creative.
And this is one of the best ways to like tap into your creativity is to just play around and see what works and what doesn't for you.
Yeah,
right? Because I remember when you first started with your pottery, like you were, this is a good segue in my mind, so I promise I'll share with you after I get the thought out. When you were first starting with your pottery, you were not always sure of like the techniques that you were using, and like everyone else in your studio, which this is your space, but there are other people working around you. And you would go and look at like, what is this person doing? How are they glazing it? What colors are they using? Am I painting this on correctly? Should I be using my hands? Should I be using more water? Like all the things, because you didn't know yet what worked for you and what your style was. And then it's kind of like how the tables have turned literally on your pottery wheel. But like, as you were figuring out your techniques for yourself, then people would start to come over and see what you were doing and like, oh, how did you do that? And like, there was this, especially with the underglazing, right? That was something that only you were doing in this space. Nobody else in the studio was using that technique. And actually there were some people in the beginning, sorry for anyone who's listening in your studio, like there were some people that were like haters that were like, oh, this is never going to work. You're doing this wrong. Why are you doing this? And like, they would put you down for doing it that way. And now it's what works best for you. Like, and people love it. So I love that you stuck to like what felt right for you. And like creativity doesn't need to look like one thing or another. It's like what you feel and how you put that out there. So yeah.
That's why I think it's so important to speak on it, because you may be creative, but maybe you don't have the courage to show anybody anything. And there is a book called Unicorn Space. I don't know if anybody's read it, but the author says that you're not really creative unless you're actually sharing what you're creating. So, in her definition, you have to actually share it. So, if I had my little pottery space and I never showed anybody anything I do, and it's all private, she says I'm not being creative.
I'm gonna say
Yeah.
that's bullshit, but I hear what you're saying, but I'm calling bullshit on that.
Well, so I like to speak on those people who need to find courage or want to find courage to step out and show somebody something that they do that they want to share.
Yeah,
And
you never know who else it's gonna inspire.
yeah, or just show a little bit of yourself and do it to just show it to a person that you trust, and like you don't have to do it on LinkedIn. This is what I do, and you don't have to do that first. You can share it with a person one-on-one. But I love talking about it. I just absolutely love sharing, like in spaces like this and in person, and I just feel very blessed.
Yeah, and uh, for anyone who doesn't already know Wendy, like she is not just a potter, she's not just a speaker, she is not just a math tutor. Like she does all these things. She has um, all these children's books and podcasts, and continues to speak about courage and creativity and kindness. Although we won't really touch on that so much today, but the creativity and the courage, like, and now you're bringing those things together
Yeah,
to actually. So now you're like throwing pottery like on stage while giving a keynote, and so I love that like people are seeing so many parts of you in one sphere, because it's your element. Like it's so much of your element in different elements. That doesn't even sound like it makes sense, but it totally makes sense.
yeah. Like all the dance experience I've had, I'm not afraid of the stage. I know how to set up before, and I know how to practice. And then the pottery, I've done it enough where I'm not teaching anybody how to throw anything. So when I make a mistake on the stage, then I talk about making your mistakes into your masterpieces.
Yeah.
And there's just so much to talk about.
Happy accidents.
People are so afraid because other people can be mean and judgmental and not like your stuff and tell you to your face and you didn't ask them. It's okay. It's just part of it. But once you feel just confident in yourself, you're like, I did this. I'm really proud of this. It might not turn out. It might break in the kiln. I might drop it. Who knows? But I'm proud that I did it, and I don't care what people say. In fact, I like to get critiques on it so I can learn how to be better.
Yeah.
And not take it personally.
Yeah, and one of the things that like I love about your pottery, by the way, I still have my 3 pieces. I hope to expand the collection. Sometimes you guys see me with my shell mug. I think that was one of your first mugs that you were testing with wording.
It was the first one. It was.
I have a bowl that has the pika flowers on it, and I have my Sea of Possibilities
Bowl.
Yeah. That I use as a planter, because it just worked for me as a planter when I got it, whether it'll stay a planter or not. But like, so one of the things that I love about your pieces, one is the uniqueness of it. 2, everything is like so custom and like individualized and personalized, and you're never gonna get 2 of the same piece. Every handle is slightly different. Every like mug is going to be slightly different. They're not manufactured in that way to be like something that's not like a bulk order. Like you're going to get custom one of a kind pieces. And when you break something, you've turned your all the things that have broken into like other masterpieces.
Right.
So put that up on the screen again. I love that.
This fell in on itself, and I call it "What the Duck," because I feel
It
like it
does
looks
kind
like
of
a
look like a
duck.
duck.
And it's the same techniques I'm doing here, but this one I have more underlays on. So this one is almost ready to go in the kiln for the first time. So this is that's a mistake. That's what the duck. A lot of people would have thrown it away, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to give it a whirl. I have this piece right here this used to be a round bowl, believe it or not. That was what it was supposed to be. And I accidentally nicked the side. So I'm like, all right, there's a spout. And then I just wanted it to be a little more even on the top. So when I took my tool to do that, I accidentally ripped part of the
Sorry,
side.
not sorry. I love it. That's beautiful.
And then I just took the rip part and I just bent it around so it's actually the handle. The
And
rip handle.
it kind of reminds me like the way that it's kind of like falling over on itself a little bit. It kind of reminds me of like something like that's very Salvador Dali like in like the with the melting clocks and like all those shapes. And then the picture here and the other one that you showed is very like impressionistic. Like I love that. And I love the colors and just like the nature that you always have painted onto it and the different patterns. Which I think lends itself to all like the I've seen your yard and like your flowers and the trees and stuff and so like I love that it's bringing that nature that outside element in.
Thank you. My backyard is my Shangri-La. So I make bells and I hang them in my apple tree. And I just love it. So this one's got a little bunny rabbit on it. And the bells started by accident too. I mean, I have different bells that have the rope coming through the top. And that's because I was trying to throw a mug and I went too deep. I dropped a tool. I went like this and I looked at it and I thought, I can make that into a bell. So then I've sold hundreds of bells just from an accident. So if you just keep your mind open, you're gonna surprise yourself on how creative you are.
Yeah, I remember when you were first doing this, we like because I helped you like kind of figure out what to put on the site and stuff, and I was every time I
Absolutely.
saw something, I was like, oh, I want that. Oh, I want that. Could you make this into a set? Like somebody's gonna want this as like a set of
Like
plates
that.
or a set of bowls or a set of mugs, and then like you're like, well, they might not all look the same. And I'm like, that's exactly it. But like they could all have a very similar design, a similar pattern, or like you threw something and I was like, oh, if you put it in my blue and my green, that's like perfect. It's my brand colors. Like I want that. And just every time I see your stuff, I'm like, I want it. I want it.
Mhm.
And it makes me want to do more of it too, because I do go through phases where I don't feel as creative or I don't feel like I have that. I mean, I'm always creative, but I don't always feel like I'm utilizing it, or I don't always utilize it as an outlet.
Exactly.
It's very good for like getting my emotions out. Sometimes I just throw
Yeah.
paint at a canvas, but like clay can be really good for that too because it's therapeutic. It's moldable. It feels good on your skin. Like all the reasons to like tap into like some creative art form. So yeah. And Linda's chiming in about your bell.
Oh,
Yes, post-it notes
but
were an accident. So look what can come from accidents, right? And just utilizing your creativity and being courageous enough to move forward with those things, even when they don't turn out exactly how you imagined them.
yes.
Um,
And don't throw away just because it's got a little flaw. Don't throw it away because it become one of your favorite items ever.
yeah. You had that reminds me of another item that you had that was I forget what you were saying that it was, and I was like, that's somebody's jewelry dish. Like you could put that next to your bed.
I don't have that with me, but I know what you're talking about.
You had two
I
different like
sold
small dishes, and I was like, I would put this one next to my bedside. I would
those.
put this one on a coffee table.
Yeah, those
And I
actually
just every
sold.
time you had something that you weren't quite sure like what to use it for, I was like, I could be this. Let's do this. So yeah, this is the power of possibility when two creative minds can come together too. So if you're feeling like you're not exactly the most creative person, find somebody who is, and they can help you tap into it. So let's tap into this a little bit more. When you're speaking or throwing pottery, helping somebody with their math and stuff, like, do you find that there's ever like a common thread besides the courage and the creativity, but like, is there a common thing that you're talking through your clients with? Maybe there's not. Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Courage is probably what I would say that's the running thread, because courage and self-esteem are kind of connected. But to be creative in your approach, like even math, saying what do I know about a triangle? Like if you have a geometry problem and you're looking at it like, I don't have any clue what to do. Well, what do you know about a triangle? It might not even be the correct start, but it starts you out. Triangles are always 180 degrees. You look at the problem. No, that's not what it was. This triangle has all three sides that are the same. That applies. And then you get confidence. The more creative you approach things, you don't have to be perfect. The very first guess you have about how to start wasn't correct. It wasn't 180 degrees, but it got you thinking in the right way. It got the left brain and the right brain going at the same time, because you're trying to find patterns and you're trying to solve numeric problems. Yeah. So you're actually activating both at the same time, and you can learn how to be creative.
And that's very relatable if we go back to one of those accident pottery pieces that you were showing before. Like, again, the way that you imagine it may not work out the first time. And so you go back to the problem. What else can this be? How else can we solve this to make it true? And so we just brought the math to the pottery.
Yeah, this is a 3-pound bowl. I started out with a 3-pound bowl, and I couldn't throw that day, but I ended up with a plate, and I'm really happy with it because I got to practice this technique I'm trying, and it's actually pretty straight, and it's not cracked on the bottom, and so it turned out this 3-pound bowl that was supposed to be is a little plate, and I'm thrilled. I don't care that I don't have a 3-pound bowl.
It's okay. And what was it that you said that pattern looked like?
Well, I'm doing.
You're practicing a technique, but you called it
something. Imposto painting. Okay. So I just go on Pinterest and I look at different people's paintings, like on canvas or wood or wherever, what poster board or whatever they're doing, and then I study what they like and the strokes they like, and then I think, I'm going to try that, and I'll put it with this over here, and then I'll put it with these colors, and I'll see what I get. So this is a sample. That's an example of this. It's like 3 different inspirations from 3 different people that I'm putting together in my own way.
Yeah, and you're playing around with it to see what works. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and it's okay. Like this is one of my first pictures. It cracked. It cracked on the bottom, but guess what? It can be a planter. I don't care. And I'm learning from, what I like and what I don't like about this one. So it's okay.
And it's also beautiful because it's all so unique and you. There's no mistaking your creativity. Like nobody could even try to, and people have tried to duplicate your process. And it's never going to look like what you did because they're not doing your process. Like it's not theirs, it's yours. It's never going to come out the same. So
that's a good point though. But if somebody's inspired by somebody else's work, you need to know that your expression is from you, and it will be unique. It won't look just like, some people can paint just like somebody else, but that's not really creative. You put your own spin on it, whether you want to or not.
Yeah. I want to pick at that just a little bit more. And when I say pick at it, I mean, like I'm picking at myself. And here's why. So, yes, I said before and several times throughout this conversation that I've always felt like I was creative, that I was born into it, surrounded by it, but I wasn't always necessarily like tapping into it and using it in the best ways for me. And what I want to pick apart about myself right now, because this is about self-reflection too, is when I was younger. You mentioned that you did this dance, and then your mom enrolled you in ballet classes and all the things. When I was younger, I'm very good at like being by myself and entertaining myself, and so a lot of like I was always creative by myself. And to the point of the unicorn book that you mentioned, I wasn't sharing it with anybody, but I've still felt creative. So that's why I said bullshit on that earlier, just because I wasn't sharing it.
You can.
But sometimes for me, creativity is also like just doing the thing, even when you don't necessarily know, like feel like you're creating something new. And so what that looked like for me specifically was I used to trace. I used to trace a lot of things. I used to trace other people's pictures. I used to trace photos. Not because I wanted to copy something else or someone else's work, but because I wanted to get into the feeling of it. I wanted to just like let go and like go through the motions so that I could like start feeling natural. And also that got me out of my head. Now, and for me, this did feel creative because I was just like trying to relate to things and like let my emotions out and just follow along. My mom walked in one day and I was tracing a photo, and it was a photo of me at camp. I used to go to sleepaway camp. So it was a photo of me standing with my friends on the porch of our bunk. And so I was tracing that because I wanted to do something with it. I don't even know. And she just thought that was the greatest drawing ever. And I was like, it's not even original. I copied it. I traced the picture. Like I didn't make this. And yes, like I am the one in the photo, but like, it didn't feel original to me. So creating doesn't always need to feel original. If it gets you for the desired feeling that you want to have, if it gets you out of your head, out of your thoughts, and back to where you feel good. But also then my mom enrolled me in painting and drawing classes, like within the same week. And I didn't necessarily feel like, all right, painting's not my creative outlet. It wasn't yet. So sometimes I throw paint at a canvas now to like let loose and get out of my shell. But like for me, I'll show you good examples of those. Happen to have them unprompted. I didn't know that I was going to talk about these things. And like, that's literally just me dumping paint just to see what happens. It mixed, like it's expired, things expire, and I still use them anyway, because I was like, let's see what chemical reactions happen. And that's where the curdling came in of the paints. And I really liked it. But like, if I show that to somebody, they might be like, well, you didn't create anything. Like you didn't, you didn't draw anything. Like, what's it supposed to be? It's supposed to be just paint dumped on a canvas. I was playing around. Like it doesn't need to be what somebody else thinks it needs to be either.
Yeah.
So I say all of that to say that like, while tracing didn't necessarily feel unique to me, somebody else thought it was beautiful. But now that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to be drawing or tracing or implementing somebody else's style in order to feel good about the artwork or the creativity.
Exactly.
Sides of the same coin, but also just like picking that apart a little bit to say that like you can look at somebody else's style. You can copy techniques to learn from them. And that, for me, that was tracing. Somebody else thought that was beautiful. I can't replicate that. I have to just go with what I'm feeling.
Exactly. And that's the more you do it, the more you can feel that and the more rewarding it is for yourself. Like I didn't even know. Jennifer asked me during COVID, she had these 2 wheels that were very far apart. She said, come with me, meet me on Monday and let's do some pottery. I was like, ugh. It's like, no, I don't want to get my hands dirty. It's like, I don't like getting my hands dirty. It's like, no, that did not appeal to me at all. She kept saying, oh, please, like, we'll be social distance, we'll be great. I said, finally I said, okay. The moment I got over my hands being dirty, which was like in the first couple minutes, I fell in love with it. And that's all I could think about. after, oh my gosh, I have to get my own wheel. I got to do this myself. And it's something that I accidentally tripped into. Um, I, I was just trying to help a friend out and spend some time with a friend and thinking, I'm going to hate this the whole time. I thought I was just going to be looking at my watch going, when is this going to be over? And then I'm like, when am I coming back? When am I coming back? So you can surprise yourself if you just give yourself a chance.
Yeah. And I love that I'm like giggling to myself because I love that you said the moment I got over the fact of not wanting to be dirty. And I could so relate to that because I uh it's like with the rain. Like you never want to get wet in the rain, but then once you're wet, you're like, okay, let's play in some puddles. Or like when it's snowing. And we have all the seasons here in New York, but like when it's snowing and you're like, I don't really I don't want to be cold. I don't want to feel this. I don't want my gloves to get wet or like any of the things. And then you're like, making a snow fort or having a snowball fight or making a snow angel. Yes, I like to tap back into being a kid and feeling like a child sometimes because it's playful. So hence the jumping in puddles and getting muddy and making snow angels. But like getting over getting dirty.
Mm-hmm.
I can also relate to that from like a slightly OCD tendency of like I'm always afraid to open the package of an art thing. I have so many paintbrushes and paints and crayons even. Let's just get back to being a kid. Crayons, markers, like watercolors, all the things, whatever the art thing is, the medium. And I never want to open it because I'm like, it's so perfect looking right now. It's so nice and clean and pristine. And once I start using it, it's going to get all messy and dirty and it's not going to look good anymore because in my mind right there, my version of looking good means that it has to be in this perfect little package, right? And can't be used. And then what happens when I break that package open? Well, then I always have to have an unopened one too, because I'm like, I still have to have one that's pristine. Again, the OCD like tendency. But like once I crack that paintbrush open or that jar of paint or the tube, and I'm like, yep, let's have at it. Now I'm in the muck and I don't care about getting dirty and I don't care what's on the paintbrush or on the canvas or any of the things. Like even when I'm painting and drawing with my niece and my nephew, we'll be sitting at the table and like they'll be finger painting, and this has happened a few times, and my niece mixes all the colors together. My nephew sticks his hands in there and he's like dabbing it on, and then it's just these blobs of color all over the thing, and mine is like a little stroke here and a little fling there, and all the colors are in order and whatever. And then as soon as I give in and I like see them having fun, and then my fingers are all up in it and I don't care that it's all over my hands.
Yeah.
But when it starts out, when I first get started, I hold back until I feel the feeling and like feel how good it feels. And then I don't care. So it's about that courage of like getting over that hump and just doing it, just doing the thing, whether that's like trying pottery for the first time, even if you think you're going to hate it, even if you think you're going to get messy or ruin your clothes, or like finger painting with your kids, or making what's something that kids make with their parents, all slime, super messy, baking in the kitchen with like kids, especially flour everywhere, or even with adults, and then you have a flour fight. There's so many like things that like if you just think about that initial thing, right? You're like, I don't want to get dirty. I don't want it to become a mess. And then I'm thinking about all the cleanup that I have to do afterwards. And like, we think about things too far in advance instead of just being present with what is and enjoying that moment. So.
You're saying that reminds me of the first year. I'm sorry, I keep saying COVID, but it affected us in different ways. So anyway, in 2020, it was December. Do you remember when you were thinking about doing a multimedia piece, but you said, I don't have exactly what I need and it's not going to be perfect? Do you remember that? And I was like, it doesn't have to be perfect.
I feel like we've had that conversation many times, so I don't remember which time you're talking about.
You made a multimedia piece around Hanukkah and Christmas time. And
yes.
Do you remember that?
Wait. Hold on. This is real time. Sorry if I'm not dressed appropriately because I'm going to go get it. I'm moving everybody, so that's why I know where these things are because I just pulled them out. I have this piece in real time.
And Linda said this, made a comment, but I missed it.
Hold on, I'll pop it back up. I'll open this up. It's taped.
Yeah, but what, Linda? But once you get the dirt on your nails a little bit, you're like, okay, I'm fine. It's done, and it's done, and I can wash them. Yeah.
So I had this menorah, right? Sorry, all the noise. Sorry, not sorry. I can't even fully open this. Real time. Okay, now there's confetti all over the floor because I just knocked some of it off, and that's okay. I'll clean up the mess afterwards. So I had this menorah that my mom had given me years ago and I had never used. And it was supposed to be like a kid's crafting thing. And I just had all this, like these cards laying around my apartment, like from people sending me gifts and stuff for like thank you notes. And I was like, all right, I'll turn all these. I don't want to throw these out because they're sentimental. I'm attached to these like thank you cards and birthday cards and Christmas cards. And I just started cutting it into confetti. And I had all this Mod Podge stuff and glaze. And remember, I just started doing it in layers. I started dumping the confetti onto there. And yes, I do remember saying, like, I don't know what else to do next. Like, it's not done yet.
You had to clear out some cobwebs. And then once you did that, the flow was wonderful. And you're like,
and I still don't think it's quite finished, but it's good for now. Like, I just started taking feathers from something and, like, other pieces and just started dumping on. And now I have several menorahs that I've had over the years, and this is the one that I'm keeping. Like some of them have disappeared in old relationships that I never kept, even if I had sentimental attachment to them, or like other ones my mom found last week when she was here, and it's like cracked, and she was like, "Are you going to keep this?" And I'm torn between like I could fix it, but I'm not attached to that one. I'm attached to this one. I'm gonna keep this one. So yes, thank you for reminding me of I get blocked too. And I just sat at a table and like took out all the materials and I was like, what feels right now?
Yeah.
And I still don't feel like it's quite done, but like it's good for now and I like where it's going. And so anytime I just have confetti or like things, I'll just glue more stuff on.
And you remember how you felt, and then it makes you it inspires you to do something else.
Yeah. And Linda's also talking about, yes, I hate the dirt under my nails. But then once I'm dirty, I'm dirty. I might as well just keep going.
You know, Linda, what else is funny is that being a dancer for so many years, I hated being sweaty. But once I broke the sweat, up to breaking the sweat, I was like so irritated because I was gonna like, oh, I'm so irritated. But once I broke the sweat broke out, it was like, oh, I'm cool with it. It's not a big deal. But every day, I'm gonna be sweating in a second. I can feel it. And then after that, after I knew it was dirty, it's over. Then I was fine.
Yeah, Linda's also a dancer, so I feel like you guys can connect on these things, and you're not that far apart from each other, North Carolina and Tennessee. And I feel like I've been trying to connect both of you for like the last 2 years, so maybe it feels right now. Maybe this is a new beginning for.
I hope you find me, Linda, on LinkedIn or Instagram on Pika Bunny Says. So.
Yeah. I love making connections. Yeah. I don't think I've ever had both of you in the same space at the same time because the words are here. I can see them. I can just get them out. Like you and I used to talk all the time and we still do. And Linda and I talk all the time, and it's like how I grew up, like where I have groups of friends and they're all in their own spaces and I can kind of like fit in anywhere. And so I just go with wherever I am. And it didn't necessarily always overlap to like bring the groups together, if that makes sense. Like growing up, you had like one group of friends that you knew from high school, and then your middle school friends are different and your college friends are different. And like the spaces aren't always the same. But you guys, both of you have always been in my LinkedIn spaces. And so, I do recall, like, I know I've definitely talked about you to Linda, and I've definitely talked about Linda to you. And so now now you're both in the same spaces. And feel like we're making magic happen.
Your worlds are colliding. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. So back to the glazing, because we segued around that. You showed your amazing pieces. What are you doing with that specific? I know we talked about your underglazing, but like what are you actually doing with it today? Like what, you have a tool in your hand. What are you doing?
So I am actually applying white where I want white. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm applying white where I want it. Like, because when you fire it, the colors are going to be more brilliant. So it's not going to be like this pastel. It's going to be a lot more vivid.
I can't get over that. I love that one so much.
It's got highlights of pink and green and purple that don't really show up until it gets fired and glazed in clear. So I'll post a picture of the app when it's finished. Even if it breaks, I'll post a picture on LinkedIn so you can see it.
Yeah. When's your next? I know you're doing a LinkedIn Live later this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to do your first one as a host.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
I'm going to be right here, and I won't be underglazing. I'll actually be throwing some clay and talking about more about creativity and self-reflection in it. So, please join me at 10 a.m. Eastern Time right here on LinkedIn.
And which day is that? I know it's this week.
This Friday.
Okay. Awesome. So yeah, everybody can tune in on Friday to see Wendy throw some pottery in real time. Where else can people find you?
Well, here on LinkedIn, of course, and then Instagram, Pika Bunny Says. Those are the two social media platforms that I'm on the most.
Yeah.
And I am on Facebook, but it doesn't really connect for me as much as Instagram and LinkedIn. LinkedIn's first, and then Instagram is second for me.
Okay. Yeah. So I will drop your LinkedIn and your Instagram links. We didn't even really get to talk about Pika today and where that name came from. So maybe we'll have to do a part 2 about that so that people can like hear the story behind that.
Okay, sure.
Because I feel like that's such a unique part of your creativity and like all the things that you do. So lastly, so people are going to connect with you on LinkedIn and Instagram. How can people connect with you if they want to have you come speak or throw pottery on stage or something? Where can they find you to do that?
If you're thinking about bringing me in to speak, you can go to Wendy Gilhula, WendyGilhula.com, and you can see my speaker sheet. It'll be right there on the homepage, and it'll tell you about me and the 3 different signature talks I have. And there will be a free call with me to see if we're a good match and talk some more. So.
Yeah. And I would feel really upset with myself if I didn't also mention Wendy's got 2 podcasts. So you can always hear a daily dose of inspiration and sunshine from her with Sunshine 365. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's available on, I think, all podcasting platforms. So go listen to your daily dose of sunshine if you want that. And if you want to learn how to be a creative writer or a children's book author, she's also got the Right Kind podcast, WRITE, Right Kind, as opposed to RIGHT. I will drop all the links so that you can find Wendy and connect with her wherever you feel comfortable. This has been a great conversation with you. I look forward to more and more talks live, and I look forward to seeing you live on your LinkedIn journey too. To everybody, I will wrap this up by saying to everybody who is getting used to these conversations and weekly guests, next week I will be solo. As I mentioned earlier, I will be moving in the next 2-3 weeks, which is happening really, really fast. It's really overwhelming. And so I've given myself space to not have more guests on in the next few weeks. But I will be going solo and then probably take a 1-week break completely to just regroup and refill my cup or pitcher. Maybe Wendy's pitcher, so that I can be my better self for you guys when I come back Operation Separations Ablazing in the kiln, of course. So tune in for more Operation Separation conversations right here on LinkedIn, also streaming on YouTube. Make sure to follow Shell Station for more, and you know where to find me. Connect with all the links on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and reach out if you're interested in an Operation Separation of your own. This never gets old. I'm loving these conversations, and I will leave it at that. So tune in next week. Same Shell time, same Shell station. Bye for now.